Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe, followers, likes, double tap.
Welcome back, everyone, to the 817 podcast. I'm Jimmy here with EJ, and we're excited to get into this week. It's been a big week around Fort Worth and nationally.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I know national, and the impeachment and all that crazy stuff is always top of mind. But honestly, team, we do have a lot going on in Fort Worth, which is exciting to get into. I know we're still locked down, still not being able to hang out, so I do enjoy this time to hang out with you every week.
Like the only adult social time I get.
Yeah. But now we can have it with a Yingling, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah, if you are not familiar, Miller Coors, that is has a factory on 35 West, a little bit south of downtown, has struck a deal with Yingling to brew their beer here in Fort Worth and distribute it out west. It's one of the oldest beers out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big time in the Northeast.
Yeah.
With my family's like Buffalo, Rhode Island, Massachusetts roots, it's a family staple. I'm excited to get it out here now.
Yeah, my family's from Philadelphia, so Philadelphia is always, it's one of the most it's so underrated. From it was such a big responsibility in history with everything there, and so with Yingling from there and being a part of that history, it's always been a cool thing, and always trying to if you're driving, you just stash them and get a whole bunch in the trunk and drive it back when we were kids. So super cool. Much better than Coors or any other option they were delivering over there, maybe. But I don't know what I guess. No, they got their own what's the problem with breweries these days? So many of these microbrews got purchased, and now everything is actually behind someone. I think you even saw that everyone's hyped up about Blue Bottle Coffee and SF. They're owned by Nestle.
Yeah.
It's just everything these days.
Yeah, I don't know what all comes out of that factory, but we know one thing now, and that's exciting. What else you want to get into this week?
I think we could go ahead and hit. Last week we had the police chief panel, which kind of led with the panelists having a little gathering with selected group of business people. So that was interesting. I wonder how you got access to that. I don't know how that works. But that
depends on how many zeros you put on a check.
Yeah. And then as well as then they had the convention center. Yeah. The around 100 people, all social distance. Panelists weren't wearing masks, would make sense to kind of were all distance fine and far away. Channel 5 kind of emceed the event. And what was her takes? Looking at Nicole's tweeting from Star Telegram, and I don't know if you did any actual watching of it on your computer.
It was a little more closed off, I guess, than I expected it to be. So there were about 100 questions submitted through their online portal, and they chose 5 of them, and I would call them softballs. I don't know. Yeah. I think we learned more negative things about certain candidates because they were layup questions, especially to people that are maybe a little more progressive on policing. And there were a couple that stood out to me just with answers that made me say, no, I really don't think that you can take us into the 21st century. But I mean, I thought it was interesting overall. I'm glad that they did it. I'm glad that they are giving access to people to see and hear from the candidates before they just become the police chief. So I appreciate the transparency, but I'd say I was a little underwhelmed.
Yeah. And I think, I think what's kind of neat about it is I mean, even in politics today, you just kind of me and my wife and our dog went to the Fort Worth Nature Center, where we obviously know where that is located in Fort Worth. But you could just tell what's so crazy about today's political scene is what an area is about by 5 words.
Yeah.
how do you, talk about your police? I know how you feel and what you think. How do you talk about black and race and ethnicity? I already know what you think. And I think what was clear here, you could easily identify and create lines in the sand on who was which way.
Yeah.
In a lot of the conversation subliminally.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's unfortunate, but that's what happens when you throw softballs. I guess you can kind of see like they need to show face, but I also think it's unfortunate because it's not like we're voting for them. So it's
right.
like it would have been nice to have a more like personal connection. But then maybe the other strategic way was they're like, well, I don't know, whoever the associations are selecting me, I know how they think. So I'm just going to say words that gets them fired up. So technically, even though we were the audience, the public,
right,
they were saying the things that they knew would get them the job.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the two that stood out to me were, I believe, Miller and Noakes. Let me find their first names real quick.
Neil Noakes and Derek Miller.
Yeah, so Derek Miller and Neil Noakes, I would say, were the two that stood out to me, just because they did articulate the need to focus on root causes and generational mistreatment that is a root cause for a lot of crime. I mean, I think that was a really simple thing for them to acknowledge, but from a police chief saying we're not going to arrest our way out of crime, we need to focus on these generational discrepancies in wealth, education access, food access, that stood out. So those were the two I really appreciated. I think it was Swear and Gin.
Yep, but she's local.
Yeah, Julie Swear, or no, Wendy Bainbridge to answer the first question, starting out saying that we need to focus on gangs.
Yeah.
And yes, there are gangs in Fort Worth, but if you are attributing a rise in violent crime right now to gangs, then you're totally missing the point. So that was probably one of the only answers that stood out to me as like, okay, immediate, Miller, like I don't want to hear that.
Miller did have we were just reviewing it on the NBC. He said he was talking about murder rates and that directly really focusing on I guess murder rates. Yeah, I think I don't know. I think what made you like Neil Noakes? You said you liked him. You just liked how he kind of maybe talked about it, like you said, internally.
Yeah. So his answer to the first question was looking at data-driven strategies, looking into societal issues and neglecting communities, food deserts, failing schools, etc. Trying to reach into the community. Don't target citizens that you're there to serve as a neighborhood officer, but actually focus on the inputs rather than just the output of the crime, like proactive policing instead of reactive policing.
Yeah.
So that I appreciated that about him.
Yeah.
He also quoted a program happening in Denver right now that's doing something similar. So just like the open-mindedness to look outside, see successful programs, and figure out how to implement them in our community. I was encouraged by that.
Yeah. And I'm looking here off of the article on Saturday. Gay and Jones. So Gay is the Austin candidate, and Jones is Carrollton police chief. No, that is Jones is where is he from? Bainbridge is from Houston, so he's from Las Vegas. So Derek Miller is the Carrollton guy.
Yeah.
And so Jones from Vegas and Gay from Austin both did say they would use crime data to strengthen their investigation intelligence, while Noakes, local guy, and Miller, somewhat local guy, said they would focus on the societal issues that leads to crime such as poverty, failing schools, and food deserts.
Which the problem with focusing on data is the data is stacked against certain people.
Yeah.
Like focusing on data is a essentially a code word for,
Yeah.
you know, we're going to target the people that have historically been arrested.
Yeah. Again, a lot of this doesn't fire me up as much as like our next upcoming topics, because I'm such a believer. Like, this is just like an unfortunate place, and crime is so hard in Fort Worth. I mean, even I know the target audience for a Star Telegram person is not you and me and the people who listen to the podcast. Like, we are the rare ones who have subscriptions to Star Telegram.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is all crime. I mean, it's crime across the board on the front page, while things that are more future forward, which I wish our news as a whole was more about, and our panels. I don't know. I think it, and then especially that we don't get to choose. So I already feel like I'm going to be like, it's going to be someone I don't agree with anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
this, at least I would say, is a good sign that transparency will be a priority moving forward. Like, if we're starting the process transparently, then it sets precedent to hold people making this decision, and then ultimately the police chief accountable to continue being transparent with change, cultural change, police reform, how budget is used. So I even though the event wasn't necessarily for us and we don't get input into the decision, I think it does set a good precedent moving forward.
Yeah. Well, speaking of also moving forward, we had the, another exciting, being able to submit to be a candidate for the mayoral election has happened, and a lot of candidates that showed up. We talked about, obviously Deborah last week, and Brian Bird last week. We have confirmed, and Zeta as well. And then as well, we have Maddie Parker, who was chief of staff for Betsy Price, which I actually think is another interesting one. And she's the CEO of Cradle to Career, an education nonprofit organization that focuses on helping Tarrant County schools get more kids into post-secondary. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the start, I guess, now that we're getting a little bit clearer here of who's winning?
I think that it gives us a nice spectrum of candidates now. Deborah is obviously Tarrant County Democratic chair. Like, she is firmly in the more progressive side. I was looking through her website, and there wasn't a ton of platform information on there yet, so it's hard to say like how progressive. Zeta is an independent, but I would say she's probably a left-leaning independent. Then you have Mayor Price's former chief of staff, who I would say is right center. Like, I think we know what we would potentially be getting from her, and it would be, I would say, probably fairly similar to Betsy Price. And then you have Brian Bird, who I would say is on the more radical right. What's the YouTube video that you can go look up if you want to know all you need to know about Brian Bird? Go on YouTube and search this video.
Just put Brian Bird's education speech, and he'll come up. I mean, just put in Brian Bird Fort Worth speech, and he will come up. And it's just bad. I mean, I would. You know what? I will spend the time to edit it into the podcast so you can hear it for yourself. And
it's
then
pretty racist. Though, like, there's definitely racist comments. There are transphobic comments. So
it's the scary Christian comments. There's nothing against Christian people. It's the scary. He claims, us evangelicals. He literally identifies himself as evangelical.
I'm Brian Bird, and thank you, board and Mr. Superintendent. I'm a graduate of Arlington Heights High School. Go Jackets! And speaking today against the transgender policies, I wanted to point out that the policies were presented as if the issue were about inclusiveness. And can I tell you, if that were the only issue here, we would all be for it. But the real issue here is this: How are we going to talk to our young people about sexuality? Because we feel that, and those of us in the evangelical community, we feel that you are imposing on us a very narrow worldview about sexuality and imposing that worldview on our children. Imagine a 12-year-old in the Fort Worth Independent School District suffering from gender dysphoria, which, by the way, is a new term for me here in the last month or so. Your policies say that the teachers and the counselors can take that child aside, say, parents, stay out of this. We're the educated ones. We know how to deal with us. Let us handle it. Guys, we can't do that. The other piece of it that I want to speak to is this. What we feel that the message on sexuality that is being posed on our children and on us, we feel that it says this: young person, if you're feeling something in that part of your life, embrace it, go for it, experiment with it, and discover who you are in that area of the world. Can I tell you that is a very destructive worldview? If you say that to trans kids, if you say that to any kid, and all the evidence that you need that that is destructive is to look at our communities where the fatherless rates are 70% or more. Because if you preach that and you say that to our kids, our adolescents, you end up with young people having babies. Let me just finish with this. Mr. Superintendent, you and I had a chance to meet about a month ago at the Tarrant Net. Group of pastors came in and visit with you. It's a great meeting. Thank you for it. And I say that to you because we're the ones who send about 450 volunteers into the school districts, elementary schools every week. And let me just tell you, we're for you. Please hang on to our right hand of fellowship, sir. Please repeal these policies and open back the door of discussion with us. Thank you very much.
Christian, and then, just what he said about the trans population. That is definitely... and then how he commented also. I would already have put the recording before this part. So if you've heard this, we can talk more detail. But for instance, he said the whole,
if kids are encouraged to explore feelings, then that's why you have communities of single parents and young parents, and people just end up pregnant if
they follow their emotions or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he talked about dysphoria, gender dysphoria and stuff like that into it. And it's just sure, it's 3 years ago, but still that's not cool. Cause that's not that long ago. And he's just also super evangelical. That's also just, it's already scary, but it also, what's scary, $500,000 already for him as mayor. And you could tell on his website compared to Deborah's, who I agree has, and that was always kind of my big concern is the ability, what is her ability to be resourceful enough to create a mobilize that campaign against the dollars that she is going to go against.
Yeah.
Because he already has submit for a sign if you want to sign.
Yeah.
Buy a shirt. His website's already ready to roll.
$500,000 is, I think, more than 3 times what Betsy Price spent in 2019. That's a lot of money.
That's that pew money.
That's a lot of money for a mayoral race.
Yep. But that's going to show that, the evangelical pockets of Fort Worth, are already securing that. But I don't know. But if anything, what Democrats have taught you, when having the most money in the bank doesn't give you the election.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But I do think it's a good place to really have across the board for candidates that sit in very distinct camps and will tell a lot about where Fort Worth is.
What I like, why I like that there's already 4 people who've committed that are legitimately running is best case scenario. I think for progressive is Deborah, but the worst case scenario of a Brian Byrd, I think the fact that we have the other 2 is very important to I'm actually comfortable because to me there's so many complexities to this. I think Deborah will be great for like equity and representation and empathy and understanding, like even her motto, One Fort Worth, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think I think we need a mayor that will show the future of Fort Worth.
Right.
And be able to sell the future of Fort Worth, a grand vision of this.
Yeah.
Less getting into the weeds about we need to have a task force for minority representation in city government. Like a lot of these like task oriented hows, I think we need more vision for where we want to go. Personally, like I even just think like you see how like, I mean, Miami's mayor is so active on getting people to Miami businesses and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a young guy, shows kind of examples. And so what I like about the potential of like the other two candidates, one, I think the independent play is cool. And seems like if anyone can kind of maybe pull that off, she's did it to her council seat. So
Yeah.
maybe that can happen. And then the Miss Parker, Young, I'm okay if worst case scenarios is a we like Kay Granger for like her action. So if I just think if we have a 3 out of 4,
we have 75% chance.
Because if it was just Bird against Peoples, I'd be sweating bullets.
The problem is that the 25% chance has $500,000 to spend. And the 75% might have that combined by the end of this.
Yeah, 100%.
I do appreciate Zeta in her Star Telegram article this week talked about how the city's been slow to adopt recommendations from the Race and Culture Task Force, such as the Civilian Police Oversight Board. That's something she's advocated for on city council. Also, with the upcoming redistricting, Zeta has been outspoken about having an independent task force committee draw the maps. The rest of the council didn't agree, which is obviously has been a Republican leading city council. That's something that she would continue to push. I think that she has a lot of it appears that she has Fort Worth, everyone in Fort Worth at the forefront of her priorities rather than pleasing certain organizations that donate to her, etc. So I really appreciate a lot of what she said.
What I think you would also like about her is her background is like city planning. Like she has a master's degree, and I think that's. I mean, if we're talking about building a future city, I mean that could be a leverage for maybe, I don't know, like how she could grant a vision around how we should plan the city. Yeah, as a next destination for future jobs and innovations. Yeah. Speaking of, that's another thing that Mr. Bird did on like just his quote, and I think with the Fort Worth Business Press or at his announcing of running mayor, like it was all about like, I care about making sure that this is a place for people with high income. And I'm just like, all right, bro.
Yeah. He also said that there needs to be more representation in Fort Worth representatives, yet he is running for mayor, and the person who is running to replace his seat on city council is his assistant, also a white male, ostensibly probably going to win that seat. Like you can almost call him an incumbent of sorts. So clearly, like, that's not what he's actually about. And it's really a joke that he would come out in in Como and announce that as his priority when that's clearly not the case.
And then honor our Western, quote, I want our city to be where families can feel safe, grow their dreams into realities, and honor our Western heritage while embracing growth. I want to make Fort Worth the most attractive city in Texas for high-paying quality jobs. All great. I mean, but it's clearly saying like you're clearly not going to make 76104.
Yeah, you don't care. You don't care about underserved communities.
Yeah, yeah. And then you obviously, based off of your values, you don't care about people who are different.
Yeah.
Either. So, Yeah. The other thing the mayors are going to have a big, whoever wins is going to have a big dealing with the economy and dealing with what COVID did to the Fort Worth economy. And as we see, Tarrant County is a leading Texas counties for COVID cases. So at least by population. So like, what is your take on that? I know we've kind of went back and forth on the balancing act of Tarrant and Arlington doing all these big events and how that's good for the city. But now that we're seeing the cases, what is your thoughts?
There's an op-ed at the top of StarTelegram.com by Mr. Steve Kaufman that I thought was well written and I enjoyed reading. If we just think about the events that Fort Worth and Arlington have attracted during this time, you've got the Major League Baseball's NLCS and World Series that they allowed fans to go to, PBR Rodeo World Finals, National Finals Rodeo, the Rose Bowl, Jerry Jones bragging about attendance at Dallas Cowboys games. I know 8 people that got COVID from Game 6 of the World Series.
Yeah.
Like, how much money justifies where Fort Worth is at with COVID, with 17.9 cases per 1,000 residents, which is like 15% higher than what is being experienced in Los Angeles County right now, that's seen as the epicenter of the virus of the world. Like, we're worse than them.
Yeah.
I mean, we just really begged people that we knew were not going to follow COVID protocols to come to the city, to the county, to the area, and just cesspool manifest as much virus as they possibly could. And I don't, for me personally, as a small business owner that saw zero bump from having any of those events here, like, I would say that it wasn't worth it. Yeah. And I struggle to see the positives outweighing the negatives of where we're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, you mentioned on social media, and then also we were talking about Los Angeles and us compared to Los Angeles. You want to break down some of that, how that breaks down. And you also were mentioning how we're like nearly double the state's, what is it? Acceptance rate, I guess, or like
positivity rate.
Positivity rate. Yeah. You want to go there? Yeah.
I mean, adjusted per 1,000 people, to kind of get an even look at population, Tarrant County is like 3 times worse than Houston. It's double as bad as the entire state. It's worse than Los Angeles. And ultimately, like, that only stacks on top of itself to where, as we run out of ICU beds, people don't have access to the medical treatment that they need, not just for COVID, but for any sort of accident that happens. And it just sort of snowballs. And while it feels like we're past the holiday season now, like we're coming up on a 3-day weekend with MLK Day on Monday, another opportunity for people to gather together. And it just feels like a never-ending avalanche of things getting progressively worse. We're still probably 3 or 4 weeks away from finishing the New Year's cycle, and now we're about to add another holiday weekend onto that. It's pretty grim.
Yeah, and I think you're also seeing that we're starting another vaccination center in Hearst, Texas. I mean, so that's right. So that's going to be, I guess.
That's the flip side is that we are less than a week away from Biden being in office. He's already announced what his plans for vaccination distribution are, and they're going to significantly accelerate what we've been doing now, because instead of focusing on vaccinating people, the president has been focused on inciting a coup, and we've just sort of let this sputter along. I believe I saw that Tarrant County Public Health was receiving like 17,000 calls. I forget if it was a day or a week, about people like trying to figure out how to
a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People trying to figure out how to register for the vaccine and get in line. That just feels like a never ending waiting process.
Yeah.
I will say, like, if you are a JPS patient or have the ability to become a JPS patient, like, sign up through them. Like, Tarrant County Public Health isn't the only place that is giving out vaccine right now.
What's your thoughts on Biden's Thursday kind of stimulus plan around all the parts that he's going to be requesting in that package? How'd you feel? I mean, this is kind of our first him coming out and saying, hey, let's get ready to roll. I'm your president now. This is how it goes down.
Yeah, I saw some people complaining about the semantics of like $1,400 versus $2,000.
Yeah,
I think that like this isn't a nitpicking time. Like I do think that enough people will, especially in the House, will step up and say no. Like, let's do 2,000. Like, why are we splitting hairs here? But I think it was very comprehensive, gave a lot of flexibility to the people, businesses that need it. But the biggest thing is just ramping up vaccine production and production and distribution and getting those to closer align and match. Yeah. And so I was encouraged by it. I think that people are, going to be upset or nitpick regardless of what he said. So
there was a lot of like progressive Twitter, like
they're still mad that Bernie didn't get nominated.
And I'm just like, wow, like, geez, guys, like, but I mean, but I think so. I think what's going on with our mayoral election and what Biden's doing, I think we have to do an opposite role. I mean, because from the vaccination kind of perspective, I mean, a lot of the local officials, city officials are getting it from like the state, Abbott's kind of the guy, right? Like if you look at California, everyone's yelling at Newsom, right? They're like, dude, you dropped the ball here. And I think a lot of the mayors get to say, hey, the state's like, they get to kind of blame the state, but then the state can't go anywhere and blame nobody. Yeah. It's really on you. And so I think our mayors maybe don't have to focus as much, especially because we also probably did okay, for a county compared to most counties probably that are, I don't know how you would compare I don't know the data on drop in production compared to the other top 15 cities in America. Yeah. But I bet we did pretty well there. And so I think unlike Biden, Biden doesn't need to give us a vision of America. We know that he's kind of like, no, let's get practical here and let's just get us back to safety. Yeah. And as long as we all get to get back to school, restaurants, running our businesses and being proud Americans again, cool.
Yeah.
But Fort Worth, I think, I don't know, should maybe have to sell that more of like, what is the future of Fort Worth?
Yeah. I think that's an interesting take.
Yeah. But who knows? The lead, I mean, it's currently leading with the cops, diversity, like crime. It's leading that way. But I also think it's because most people who vote are older.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's, I guess we can go to our wins and losses.
Yeah, let's do it.
Man, we are rocking on time today. This is going to be for as boost this was. I mean, these are good wins and losses though.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So let's go. You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. My win is that Miss Juneteenth director Channing Godfrey Peoples signed a major deal with NBC Universal to produce a TV show developed out of Miss Juneteenth. So Miss Juneteenth is a story that focuses on the Juneteenth pageant. It's based in Fort Worth, shot in Fort Worth, and it really has gained some national recognition this year. The lead actor, female lead actor Nicole Bahari just won Best Actress at the Gotham Awards. And that it's been nominated for a number of other awards in critics circles. And so, I mean, this is a really big deal that Peoples would go from first feature film directed to signing a deal with NBC Universal to direct a TV show like this. It hasn't been decided where it'll film yet. I would love and know that the Film Commission will be pitching for it to continue doing work in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
But I think this could speak to an opportunity for the city of Fort Worth and Visit Fort Worth to brand Fort Worth around the Juneteenth holiday and pitch the city as a place to come and learn the history of Juneteenth. There's already a small Juneteenth museum right by the historic Southside Community Center. But with Miss Opal Lee and everything that she has done with this movie and the Juneteenth pageant that is really special here in Fort Worth, I think it could be a really great launching point for the city to become a place to come and visit for the purpose of learning about Juneteenth.
I think also what's cool about it too is if you're going to build a modern city, you have to have modern companies, but then you also have to have creative clout. And this just gives us another boost in that space.
Yeah.
That's important. And then also it's diversity, right? Nothing fires me up more than, our lead musicians and our lead film people are people of color. That's like, I think, shiny, like a good attractiveness for millennials and people who crave kind of feeling like you live in America that actually represents our data.
Yeah, and whatever the series ends up looking like, whether it is based out of Juneteenth or not, like this is a black woman getting to tell the stories of black girls and black women in the United States. We don't really know where it's going to be based out of yet.
Also to note, though, I think if you're really, if Visit Fort Worth or if these people are going to really highlight Juneteenth, I think we got to go big in the sense of we have, and I think we should really talk more of that in a different show. We have crazy history around the Ku Klux Klan and the last building being owned.
Yeah.
I think if we're really going to highlight Fort Worth as a destination to Juneteenth, it needs to be because we're trying to rebound from our errors of being white supremacy. Because I think if there was a story, I'm no director here, but the story goes, the first half of our life, this is what Fort Worth was.
Yeah.
And here's what we're doing today to highlight what we actually, and talk about that full history.
Yeah.
And then you turn those buildings and make it about, hey, these are the scars and these are the new things we're growing.
I agree. I think that this could be like Fort Worth Liberty Bell.
Yeah.
Outside of I like that. I think Fort Worth wants its Liberty Bell to be the stockyards, but that isn't attracting a young audience of people to travel here. But I think that between Miss Opal Lee's farm and just all of the history and activism that has come out of here, and that being amplified with a voice like Channing's, I think it could be a really cool thing. That's something that I would hope and press Visit Fort Worth and the city of Fort Worth to work towards.
And we're assuming, we have not confirmed, but I'm sure we can confirm it relatively easy, that she's related in some capacity to Deborah Peoples.
Yeah,
I would assume so.
I would too.
We're not that big, and
the Peoples family is doing big things in Fort Worth, and that's really exciting.
And I remember my big concern about was, could Deborah get a younger crowd excited?
Yeah.
I mean, what a great asset is
True.
if you have another family member or even someone close in your community or network that's doing cool things that maybe can also support and be a face.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's your win?
My win is the Tarrant County. Tarrant County is the Fort Worth ISD is doing a historic multi-million-dollar pack with Tarleton State University, one of the fastest growing regional universities in the country, and beginning with the 2021-2020 school year, Tarleton State University will provide annual scholarships and guaranteed admission to Fort Worth ISD seniors who graduate in the top 25% of their class. You don't have to take the SAT, ACT. You're automatically accepted. And if you're graduating in the top 25%, you're going to guarantee a minimum of $1,500 scholarship. And as well as if you're in the top 10%, it's $3,000. And then they're going to have a big kind of a larger scholarship that's $10,000 annually for a Fort Worth ISD student. So it's important, and I think it's big because it is a fast growing. People don't realize how big Tarleton is.
Yeah,
it's actually one of the 40th largest public schools in the country. So it is a big school, and it's growing really quickly. Nearly their freshman classes last year grew nearly 10%. So cool. I think that's a big win.
I think anything that does not include the ACT or SAT is something that I'm excited about, because that's just another barrier of privilege to a lot of underserved communities, whether that is having the resources to correctly prepare for it, even paying for it, or knowing how and where to get a waiver to not have to pay for it. So I think not including that is a great leveler that I hope more universities and scholarships will grab onto.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can go into losses now. What was your loss?
Yeah, I'll say my loss. This is an interesting, just Medium article put together by Dr. Chip Stewart, who's a professor here in Fort Worth, that he just, sort of went online in the wake of everything that's happening with Roger Williams being on the TCU Board of Trustees, and calculated the political donations of the TCU Board of Trustees in this last election cycle. And what he found was that 31 of the 48 members made a campaign donation, including hundreds of small donations. They made a combined 955 contributions for a total of $1.63 million, and donated about 150 times more to Republican candidates than to Democratic ones. Of that 1.63 million, 1.57 million went to Republicans. Only a little more than $10,000 went to Democrats. We talked on the last episode about Roger Williams and the implication of that for a school like TCU. It just really seems like the direction that TCU acts like it wants to go is very different from the decision makers on the Board of Trustees, who are the people who set the vision for the school. And there's just another little data point for that. Yeah. If you are expecting TCU to change anytime soon, just add this to your little pros and cons list.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest. Tarleton is owned by Texas A&M.
Farmers Fight.
Yep. And then you also have the law school, Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
UTA is growing. If you want to look at diversity admission into those two schools, where the growth rate is, UTA. What they're doing in Arlington around UTA. I went to a coffee shop before all the pandemic we have some part-time mentors out there. So I went to see them, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of swanky. But
yeah, they're doing a lot to try and develop that downtown area.
All I'm saying is, I'm not saying TCU will never not have, but what can make them, maybe they're the Rice University to U of H, UTA's U of H. And like, I think TCU, if they did the right thing, could be University of Texas, and everything else you're just Edwards. You're just like it's a complete separation. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I think TCU is obviously invested in athletics as its means to growing itself as an institution, which is an approach to take. And it's worked. Like, the school is growing, but it hasn't invested as much seemingly into research or professors' research and development that might grow it in an academic bubble more so. And I feel like this is just sort of that's a symptom of the makeup of the board of trustees. So that was just an interesting tidbit I read. And I feel like what's been annoying as well, though, is like have all these
businesses are coming out. Yeah, we just stopped doing our donations to Donald Trump or the Republican Party right now, and it's like, yeah, but you
the election cycle is over.
You act like, oh, that edits everything you did beforehand. Honestly, the TCU's board is probably no different than any other big board in Fort Worth. And in a lot of southern cities.
I would say the loss is more so the extent to which the difference is. Like, there's not diversity in a place that is trying to preach that they want diversity. So when your decision makers aren't diverse, the decisions aren't going to be diverse. So it's not like, I wouldn't want that to be, 90% the other way either. Like, we need to have diverse decision makers, and not ones that support people that want to overthrow the government.
So my loss kind of goes on to more of, who definitely put money into Donald Trump is the NRA. So my loss is the NRA says it's moving to Texas because of, it really, what's annoying about it is something gets out that NRA is moving to Texas, the National Rifle Association fired a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, is going to reincorporate in Texas. So it's fleeing New York and trying to get away from New York, and New York's basically suing them and trying to get those claims for giving out money unaccordingly to executives and people higher up in the organization. But here's the thing, like all these Republican politicians on Twitter are like, yeah, welcome NRA to Texas. And like, they try to use it as like, oh, here's Texas again, growing businesses and adding jobs and bringing people, when really it's just the NRA creating a tactic around getting this legal battle hopefully done in Dallas, Texas. And if they went bankrupt and then did this and reincorporated, that means then they would feel better off at winning the fight because it's in Texas rather than in New York, because their headquarters is actually in Virginia. So it isn't technically bringing anything here. And besides showing you how powerful people try to manipulate the law. And this is why, this is how we always find loopholes.
My loss with that would be if the NRA is going to come and find a big city to move to, which of the big Texas cities are going to say, oh, come on, guys. Like, it's Fort Worth. And that's a bummer to think about.
Let's just say your Juneteenth idea would not be bringing visitors,
Like, oh, good, Fort Worth is making national headlines again. And this time it's because we welcome the NRA with open arms.
But we definitely have the NRA convention here. I see that sign. I don't know if it was.
Is it the NRA or it's just a massive gun show? I see. There's a massive billboard that just says gun show for like 6 months out of the year. Driving into Fort Worth from the east.
But so that's that. And Good. I mean, a very high action week in Fort Worth, and really expect more of that to come, as now we're going to be able to have a microscope on these elections.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the monolith that popped up right across the street from my house.
I thought that was going to be your win.
Well, it was a bummer that the people came out and said that they did it. Like,
yeah.
No,
it was their,
like just let it be there. You know, like maybe tell your little circle of friends, like, hey, we built this thing and put it there, and it was funny.
Yeah, you got to keep the conspiracy.
Yeah, keep the mystery alive.
Yeah, exactly.
You ruined it after like one day. Wait like a month or something.
Hey, some people can't handle fame.
It was pretty poorly constructed. But yeah,
and it was like super light, right? And it was
as we were walking up, like a couple kids were pushing it over. And you could tell that it was like some really cheap sheet metal that was also spray painted silver.
Yeah, I like how your wife was like, yeah, I guess it looks like something I'd done in high school or something. Yeah, like, man, throw that shit. Get out. This is a real monolith. Do it.
The two guys that were there were two other guys that were there, and they own a car shop, and were like, yeah, like this is a pretty bad welding job.
Hey, we will keep on, you know.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in this week. We hope that you have a safe, socially distanced MLK weekend. And we'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Cause I do what I gotta to get where I'm going.